Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another Naked Dragon event. Our first one actually in this beautiful conservatory on this gorgeous spring day, which is more like a summer's day. It's absolutely lovely. And I'm delighted that we have a very special guest joining us this afternoon. Tad and I connected, it was actually via Facebook I first came across him. Only about a month ago, somebody contacted me via Facebook to say Tad was coming over from Canada, and did I know anybody, or could I possibly help by hosting an event for him? And I checked the diary and found that the diary was full, and said, really sorry, no, we can't fit an event into the schedule. And so I sent Tad an email to say, really, really sorry, have a great trip. And look forward to seeing you again very soon, and on your next trip we'll arrange something. And Tad emailed me back and he said, well, what about Wednesday, the 28th of March? And I said, oh no, we can't do that, we've got an event going on in the evening. So Tad said, well, what about the afternoon? Oh, what about the afternoon? Why not? We're here anyway. We have our captive audience, so that's wonderful. So here we are, sort of 2 weeks after making contact. Tad's almost finished his whistle-stop tour of the UK via my hometown of Cardiff to the Doctor Who conference. And so he's all geared up and ready to roll. So, ladies and gentlemen, Tad Hargrave.
Please don't stop. Please don't stop. Hello everybody, my name is Tad Hargrave. I come from Canada, I live in Edmonton, Alberta. And I run this business called Marketing for Hippies, and I've been doing it for about 10 years on and off, working with green, local, holistic kind of businesses around their marketing. So here I am, and my beginnings of my things are always awkward and rambling as I try to figure out what I'm going to talk about. So that's how I roll. I pick up as I go. I find a lot of the people who I work with are in this situation where they're good at what they do. They've learned spent a lot of time and money learning how to do what they do, but they haven't necessarily learned how to articulate it or how to market it, and so there's this struggle in marketing of where the internal reality of the business is good, but the external perception is not as good. Yeah, it's like it's this wonderful thing, but people don't actually get how wonderful it is. And so if I had to sum up marketing in a sentence, I'd say marketing is about establishing the value beyond the immediately apparent. It's establishing the value beyond the immediately apparent. If it were immediately apparent how great what you did is, more people would be buying. But it's not always just immediately apparent. It's not always on the surface how great it is. So this is, I think, one of the core challenges in marketing is how do we take what's so good on the inside and make sure that that gets seen and understood on the outside. And before we jump into the sort of nuts and bolts of it, so I started this because I had so many friends who were just good-hearted people who wanted to not work for the man, not work a 9-to-5 job, do something creative, and that expressed themselves, and yet they often struggled with this. And and I just would sit with them and talk with them and give them advice and ask them good questions, and eventually I just thought I should be paid for it. And so I started doing it as a as a business. And every passing year, it feels more important to me, the marketing piece. And there are 5 reasons that I sort of sit with these days of why I think this whole marketing thing matters. Number 1 is, if you handle your marketing, you're going to get more money and more clients. It's just sort of as a bottom line. Even though I think most of us aren't motivated by becoming a gazillionaire or, et cetera, it's a reality. 2 businesses, all things being equal, the one with the better marketing will do better. A second reason, a big picture for me is that when I look at the world and all of the challenges we face of peak oil, peak water, food shortages, social injustice, all of that, I feel like most of the solutions already exist. We've got straw bale and permaculture. We've got local food growers. We've got solar power, wind power. We've got all these alternatives to what's not working. But if people don't know about those alternatives, they functionally don't exist. And people knowing about these things and finding out about them is marketing. and people also understanding what they are, because sometimes they exist, but people have misconceptions about it or misunderstandings. I feel like that's marketing. So I just feel like as a movement, we need to be a lot better at marketing. Yeah, so that just feels important. I feel so inspired by the notion of everyone who's up to something really good for the world being just a badass marketer. Because right now, the people doing the bad things are amazing marketers. And they sell stuff, it's crazy, they sell stuff that kills us. And they sell stuff and we take it, because just the marketing is so good. All these things that are like, not just not good, but like the opposite of what we need often. Messages we get sold, products we get sold, and their marketing is really good. And I don't know, there's a whole bigger conversation of activism and how do we change this. But I do feel inspired about the idea of everyone doing something good being just brilliant at the marketing piece of what they do. Yeah. Third reason this whole marketing conversation matters to me is because I feel like you are where you are because of people who came before you, who inspired you in some way to do what you're doing. And they may or may not have any idea how much they inspired you to do this. And similarly, there are people looking at you who are like in a job and they want to get out and they're looking to take that leap. And they look at people like us and they're kind of like, is it a good time? Should I do it? And if they see that we're broke and miserable and struggling, I just think they don't move. We can talk it to death, or we can live it into being. And I feel like no matter what we say to people about, oh yeah, encourage them to start their own thing, it's way more inspiring when they actually see somebody do it. It's like, oh, you're doing this thing I want to do, and you're actually sustaining yourself on it. Amazing. I want to do it. So, and I feel like we need a lot more people being willing to take those risks. It's like Gandhi in India, just the non-participation. If people just opted out of the things that aren't working, that would be a big help. But they need something to opt into. They need to see that it's working, to be reassured that they can pay the bills, take care of their family. The fourth reason is I believe that marketing makes you better at what you do. I think marketing actually makes you better at what you do for two reasons. One is if you handle your marketing, you're going to get more clients. More clients equals more practice equals you're better at what you do. Because sometimes people are like, oh, I just need to learn more, and then I'll get another certification, I'll get another something, and then I can get more clients. And it's like, I just need to be better at what I do so I can get more clients. And part of me is like, well, or you should be getting more clients so you can get better at what you do. Because you can book learn all you want, but the actual doing the work with people, I think, is where we really learn the most. But number two, I think marketing asks a lot of questions of us that it's easy to avoid. And the answering of those questions gives us so much clarity about what we're really offering, what we're really about. And as we get clear about that, we can actually weave that back into what we do in a whole new way. Because it's easy to get it sort of in your heart about why you do it and to feel that. But it's another when you have to translate that into a language that other people can understand. And in the translation, I think we learn a lot too about what we really do. Because otherwise it can just be intuitive. I just do this, it feels right, it feels good. But as we clarify it, there's not just the opportunity for the marketing, but there's a way, and I think this will become clear as we go through, that actually weaves back into the product itself. And we can even redesign the product to make it even more true to what it's really about. Because I think a lot of the times the way we design our products, it's a default. It's just like we look at what does everyone else do. And that's how most people market, and how a lot of holistic practitioners will market is just like, well, how does everyone else market? Oh, I see brochures and business cards and fancy logos, and they spend thousands on that. And it doesn't work because most of the practitioners they were copying were broke. So it's a terrible strategy to model. So to me, this conversation around marketing is really important. And there are three. So there are two main dynamics that people kind of get caught in. I see. There are three things I'm going to talk about today. One is there's an energetic level of marketing. It's not always just what you do. Sometimes I've seen people use the exact same marketing tactics, but coming from a different place, And with one person it feels gross, and another person it actually feels really wonderful. And it's the same tactic. It's the same approach. Excuse me. So I want to talk about that. Then we're going to talk about the 3 levels, sort of 3 core elements you need in the business to make it work. And then we're going to expand on one of those that I think is the most foundational. So, yes. Okay. So if you look, so there's sort of 2 poles that people, I think, vacillate between. Oops, yeah. So one is collapsing, and the other is posturing. I don't know if you can see this at all. No. So there's collapsing, and then there's posturing. So collapsing is where you, this happens around money a lot, where people are just like, it's like somebody says, what do you charge? And it's like, oh, I charge $100 an hour, and the person winces. And they might be wincing because they think that's too low. I'm surprised. But the immediate reaction is just like, we're 75 or 50, 20, 10, I'll pay you. How about I just pay you? It's your first time, you know, immediate just giving it away. And the collapsing is really coming from a sort of a, oh, these markers are so nice. From a lose-win place, where it's like, I'll lose so you can win. This is the realm of the martyr. These people are dangerous because eventually they snap. They get to a point where they're like, I just give and I give. You know? Because the veneer of it is like, I'm giving to contribute. But the reality of it often is there's this hidden, unspoken agenda, which sounds something like, love me. And so if they don't get enough, there's, you know you're in collapsing when resentment starts to happen. You start to notice you're resenting your own giving. There's giving where it's like, I'm just actually giving for the joy of it. I'm not actually attached to whatever response is. I'm just doing this because it feels good to do. Wonderful. And then there's the giving where it's like, yeah, there's this secret agenda of love me, love me, love me. And people burn out eventually when they do this. And it seems very noble. It's like, oh, these people just give and they give and they give. But on the receiving end of it, it feels like a burden. I don't know if you've ever had that experience, but it's like there are people who will do workshops on that sort of sliding scale. They'll have like but they'll do it from this place of collapse, and they'll be like, so everyone, I hope you enjoyed the workshop. There's just a bucket at the back. Just put in money in the bucket. If you want to, you don't have to put in money. If you didn't like the work, I mean, you may be more broke than me, so why don't you take money? I'll just put money in the bucket. You just take money out at the end, and collapsing. Anything we do that we think people might not like, they might judge us, they squint, they look at us funny, it's just like this immediate. So it's not a great place to come from in marketing, and yet it comes up a lot. The second place is this idea of posturing. And posturing it's more of this kind of win-lose scenario. And posturing is like where people start to pretend. This is, I think, where we usually feel gross about marketing, where it's kind of puffed up, it's very slick, it's very perfect. It's so earnest, it's so sincere. It's so sincere, it's not sincere anymore. It's people pretending they've got it more together than they do. Politically, you see all these scandals erupt. Like the person who is the most pro-family values is the one that gets caught in this, alternative sex club or something, or they're the one that get busted for the drug problem, and there's a lot of posing, and you're posturing when you're just scared all the time of being found out as a fraud. People will say this to me, it's like, I feel like a fraud with this. I'm like, well, maybe you're a fraud in this. Maybe that's true. Maybe we should look at that. But people feel like they have to. They feel like, oh, well, to succeed in marketing, I have to do that. I have to, dress for success, and I have to, I'm not saying you shouldn't, dress well, but as you can see, it's marketing for hippies, people. Do as I say, not as I do. But Yeah, there's just this fear that happens where it's like the relationship coach where their marriage is totally falling apart, but they never talk about that. Yeah, so it's win-lose. This is also, this is where it feels kind of slimy, kind of gross. And I think there's a hidden agenda here that sounds something like value me, respect me. And both of these, I think there's this sort of shared agenda in between them of that it's all about getting the sale. In collapsing, we'll get the sale by we don't get paid as much, but we'll get it. We'll get a booking because we think that we have to do that. We have to get them to say yes. So I'll do this by devaluing myself. With the posturing, it's often more this is where I think sales gets a little pushier, gets a little more aggressive. You see all these marketing tactics that are kind of slimy. And it works. Yeah. And I wish I could say it didn't work. It does work. You'll have these big workshops and people will be running to the back of the room at an intro to sign up for the next level thing and sign up for buy products that they don't even understand what the hell they are, but they've just been kind of hyped into it. And so it works. But there's the shadow side of it that never gets talked about, which is huge buyer's remorse, where people will buy it and then ask for refunds later. Then you get people come to the workshops who aren't a fit for the workshop, and that's a drag. So then they ask for refunds or they're not, and it's there's a whole downside to it. So it can work to get sales, but what it will not work to do is create loyalty. It won't actually work to create a relationship. It'll get people to buy, be buy 2 now, get 1 free, this much off, only this many spaces left, etc. It works, but it doesn't create this kind of long-term relationship. So when there's the agenda of love me or value me, and everything's about going for the close, getting the sale. When I started, forgive me, but I did all this really gross, high-pressure sales stuff. I was 18, 19, working for a franchise of a leadership development company, and all the sales stuff I got was this old school, traditional Brian Tracy, Zig Ziglar, Tom Hopkins, Tony Robbins, all about going for the close. And as long as that's the agenda, there will be the experience of pressure. Everyone try this. Put your arms up in the air like this. Arms up like this. Hands together. And then push as hard as you can with your left hand. Push as hard as you can with the left hand. I didn't say push back with your right. Push as hard as you can with your left hand. I didn't say why are any of your hands still up at all? I didn't say push back with your right, and yet your hands are still up. What did your right hand do immediately when your left pushed? It's crazy. When we push people, they push back. Even when that's you, even when you're pushing yourself, there's the pushback. So as soon as there's the agenda of going for the sale, there will be resistance. There will be a pushback. And so most of the philosophies in sales come from this place of how do we go for the sale in a sneakier way, in a more covert way. And but people feel it at some level. They feel like they're getting worked, and they don't know why, but it doesn't feel right. So this is the challenge, is I think people often feel like they're torn between those two, because people will be collapsers, their whole thing, and then they go to a seminar, they're like, you've got to charge what you deserve, you've got to charge what you're worth, which is kind of a postury energy in a way. And then money and our self-worth get conflated with each other. And then it's if somebody's charging more, does that mean they're worth more as a human being? Oh, shit. Oh, no. I got to raise my rates. It's don't you think you're worth it? And it's wow, your self-worth and money have just no connection to each other. But in the posturing place, it starts to. And so people will be collapsing their whole life. And I had a friend, Laura, and she went to this workshop with this guy, T. Harv Eker, and it seems very postury to me, but and she learned how to do this kind of sales pitch that's very the infomercial style, where it's this seminar is normally $5 million, but today it's only $100,000, and for the first 27 people, only $99. And she learned how to do this whole pitch and thing, and she did it on her friends. She got her friends together to do a demo, and she did the thing. At the end of it, they were just what happened to you? Where is Laura? Like, she changed. She had thought she had to become something else. And it just, and then she was like, oh God, that felt terrible. I never want to, back into collapsing. And so I think people feel like they have to kind of go in between these two, and I just want to suggest these two are both like, to be let go, ideally. Because there's another third alternative. And I got this from some colleagues of mine, a business called Authentic World in the Bay Area, San Francisco. And yeah, so credit where credit's due. And they had an idea of sort of this idea of, call it composure. And composure being where we're in a real place of win-win. Where, composure sounds a lot like, hey, I love you, and I also love me. I respect you, and I also respect me. And there is an agenda still with, from the place of composure. But the difference is it's not a hidden agenda. When we're in posturing and collapsing, this never gets talked about. The love me, getting the sale, value me. That's never on the table explicitly, even though it's actually driving the whole agenda of the conversation. You'll never have somebody be like, so I was wondering if I could just give things to you in a way that will not actually sustain me long term because I'm hoping to earn your love. Well, that would be fine because that would help me and my reputation because I'm trying to get respect and be valued by people. So that would be wonderful. That's a great, you never have that. It's just all hidden. So there is an agenda with composure, but the agenda is all about the truth, specifically around this question. Is it a fit? Is it a fit? And this idea of fit, to me, is like the central piece in marketing. This becomes the agenda. Just, is it a fit? Can I help you? Would this be useful? Are you the best kind of client for me to work with? Would working with you bring out my best? So when marketing comes from this place of composure, there are people who are composed. They're just very comfortable in their own skin. They're very comfortable with themselves. They just seem at peace with themselves. And you never sense that they're trying to sell you something that you don't need. Or they would never give you bad advice. They really have your best interest in mind. But you also trust that they would take care of themselves, that they wouldn't do something that they'd then resent. Can you think of people like this in your life? How does it feel when you're around these people?
Relieved.
Yeah, totally.
Relieved.
Why are you relieved? What is it about that?
Because there's no hidden agenda.
Right. It's amazing how much energy goes into defending ourselves from agendas all the time. When you're around somebody who's not got a hidden agenda and is just comfortable with themselves, it's like,
Yeah, you feel safe.
yeah,
Yeah.
totally. Yeah, there's no need to defend. There's no need to push back. We don't need all these sales tricks. Because the sales tricks are there because of this. And once we let go of that, it's funny, the objections don't come up in the same way. Or they come up in just a very honest way of oh, I don't know if I can afford that. But it's not a defensive thing. It's just a real honest part of the conversation that we can engage in, honestly. Yeah. So to me, sorry, this is the goal. When I think about marketing, this is the place I'm thinking of it coming from. Because when we're in that place, everything else seems to move smoothly. When we're not in that place, it doesn't. So what I'd love to do is take a few minutes, again, at your tables, to share what is your experience of those three in your own personal life, composing, interesting. I was talking with somebody who was in Egypt, and this guy was giving them a tour of all these sites, and he'd made up this word collapsion. The things that had collapsed. He'd be like, this collapsion here is and they didn't have the heart to tell him it wasn't a word, because they're it's a good word. It should be a word. It's a new word. Yeah. So yeah, to share your experience of collapsing and posturing and composure. It could be in your own life, but also what you've seen in the marketplace, or yeah. So let's just take a few minutes to share that. Because I'm more of a collapser, for sure. When I was doing the kind of gross selling stuff, there was a lot of posturing, but I think I tend to collapse. Tends to be my default. But yeah, I started noticing around oh, that person's a collapser, that person's a posturer. See people in relationships and they'd be like, oh, I'm fine, whatever. I'd be like, posturer, yes. Easy. Yeah, I started to see it everywhere. I just notice it all the time now. This is all good dating advice too. But in dating, that happens a lot where, it's like people finally get to a point where it's like, wow, I'm tired of being disrespected or like being walked over or like, I'm tired of being so full of shit. And they hit that point. Yeah, so that can happen. Yeah. I was going to say with the when in doubt, lean out. In general, I would say, yeah. Though what I find is like posturing is like most of the mainstream business scene is so much posturing. And it's almost like not enforced, but just that's the way it is. That's what you have to do. With most of the holistic scene, it's collapsing. And in my experience, collapsing is often the leaning in. It's often the desperate kind of, and posturing, I don't know, can sometimes energetically have a like leaning out quality emotionally, even though there might be the grab for the money. I was in Thailand, we did this event, brought together, in '99 I started a project called Youth Jams, bringing together like 30 young change makers for a time from around the world for a week, really inspiring. And we just did one in Thailand last year, and 30 of the most inspiring young people you can imagine doing incredible work, like ages kind of like, I don't know, 18 to 35 kind of in there. And this theme came up of how much everybody beat themselves up for not doing enough. And I was just like, wow, if anyone should be immune to that, like doing enough. Some people, it's like, yeah, you probably should do more, like what the hell? But not these people, they all do so much. And it struck me like in consumer culture how when people don't feel like enough, they go shopping, retail therapy, they buy more. But people in the activist scene, when they don't feel like they're enough, they just take on another project. So I feel like even in the charity world, this can be endemic. So that when we can get detached from needing to get the sale or whatever it is, yeah, those people are a delight to be around. When people are just like I love you, I value you, I don't need anything from you personally. But I think part of the challenge is the collapsing, which is so endemic in the holistic scene, is this almost like I don't want to admit that I have needs. And if I do admit it, I'm not okay with having needs. And so then it just becomes you win and I lose. My needs don't matter. I'm not okay having them. And thank you so much. Thank you. Yeah. So there can be a lack of self-care, which is ironic in the holistic scene, given how much it's all about self-care and how often we don't take care of ourselves because we're trying to. But yeah, so here's the second piece. So there are three kind of core elements that I think need to be in place for marketing to work. If you take any one of these out, it doesn't work very well. The first one is this idea of the platform. So the platform is what you're known for, kind of your brand, your identity. It's what you're known for. When people talk about you, what do they talk about? So that's the platform. And we'll come back to that a bit later. And the second part are the paths. And the paths are, how do people find you? This is where we start talking tactics and strategy and marketing. So social media, PR, speaking, hosting, networking, all of those are kind of paths. And the third part is the container. And the container is all about it's kind of so what? They show up, they found you now, they followed this path, they've found you, and now what happens? What's the next step? Because it's great. People often, I think, have this idea like, oh, if I could just be discovered, that would solve all my problems. Put me on Oprah and have her give me a shout out. But really, would that actually do it? A lot of people win the lottery, win lots of money, and next year they're broke again. They didn't have a container, a way to kind of hold that money. And with marketing, I've seen so many people get a lot of PR and literally zero increase in business. Nothing. Or a short bump and then totally back to normal. So, yeah, so we need all three. So the platform we're going to spend a lot of time on, so we'll come back to that later. But the platform is really the heart of it. This is really the... everything gets built around the platform, around what your business is about. And the platform is, because it's what you're known for, it's often a very monodimensional thing. It's very sort of, for a lot of businesses, it's just a kind of flat. There's nothing inspiring about it. And so when we look at the platform, we want to be looking at depth, because there's 6 things you could be known for, 6 different possibilities, at least in my mind at this time. And most entrepreneurs usually just pick one. And it's not even the most inspiring possibility. So we'll go into that in a bit. But when I look at the paths, I think of it like a water faucet. And the water, I guess, representing clients and money and all that. And the container, I'll put this here. It's kind of like a bucket. And that holds the water. But the challenge is, for most businesses, that bucket has a ton of holes in it, or literally no bottom to it. And so sort of clients come in and just go out right away. It's like they go fill their bucket, and then they walk home. By the time they're home, they're like, shit, there's no water in my bucket anymore. Damn it, I worked so hard. And so then they have to go back the next day and fill the bucket, and it's more work. And a lot of people have this idea that that's their model. It's just like more water, turn on the faucet harder, more faucets to get more water. And I want to suggest that the most energy efficient thing to do is just plug holes in the bucket to whatever you get to be able to contain that and hold that over time. So
that's a repeat business idea.
Yeah, and it's about
Therapy.
Yeah.
There is a side to it that kind of, if you're doing your job properly,
Right.
you're kind of not going to see that person again. You know, if I'm seeing somebody because they've got
Maybe not right away. Yeah, sure.
and I get rid of their spider phobia,
Right, and it's possible they might have issues down the road they want help with.
that's true.
Yeah, and then there's the question of like, have you actually sustained a relationship with them over time, so that 5 years later when something else comes up, or a year later when they want help, or they have a friend who needs help, do they still remember who you are? So, yeah, because I think that's very normal. People will go in cycles where it's like they'll see somebody and then maybe they're done for a while, then maybe they want to come back later. I think that's a very normal thing. Yeah. So when we look at this idea of the bucket, another way of looking at it is there's this old idea in sales of the sales funnel. It's like this. So if you go to an ice cream shop, you can get a little pink spoon sample, little taster of the ice cream. You can get a ice cream cone, pistachio. You can get a bucket. You can get ice cream cake. And you can also get, some ice cream stores, believe it or not, have like a club you can be a part of, where every month you get some outrageous flavor of ice cream that nobody's ever tried, and people pay a lot of money because they're like super obsessed about ice cream. Believe it or not. There are, if you go to a yoga studio, there's a free class, there's your drop-in class, there's like a 10-pass or month thing, there's your weekend retreats, and then there's what would you guess is the biggest thing, where yoga studios make like all their money? Any guesses? Private sessions? Teacher trainings. Yeah. I was shocked to learn. It's like if you took teacher trainings out of a yoga studio, business model collapses in 6 months to a year. In the world of Doctor Who, there might be the free TV show. There are the books and comic books I could get. Then down here, there's the Doctor Who convention in Cardiff, Wales that I just went to. Wow. I don't want to say anything, but don't eat the food here. Anything with meat in it, do not eat it. I think we just learned something. Oh, God. So we've all seen this kind of model. This isn't a new idea. Free, cheap, middle price, the bronze, silver, gold. But to me, what's so interesting about this is how little thought this is given, and what happens when you start trying to remove levels. Like, consider the absurdity of just doing pink spoons, just giving out samples. Yeah, everyone loves you. You're super popular for a while, but at the end of the day, if there's an ice cream example, you're broke. and you have no ice cream. A double whammy. At least if you had ice cream, you could just console yourself with it. You know, like, oh, I'm so poor. Yeah, I always have you ice cream. I love you. You know, but it's also, there's the thought of like, oh, but I'm giving all this free stuff away. But imagine if you went to an ice cream shop and you're like, can I try flavor? And you try some, you're like, oh my God, that's the best flavor I've ever had. And you're like, I'd like more. And they're like, oh, sure, we can give you another little sample. You know, how frustrating that would be. You're like, I want a bucket of it. And they wouldn't do it. Or consider the absurdity of taking out everything except the most expensive level. You go to a yoga studio and you're like, hey, do you have any classes today? And they're like, no, we don't do classes, but in 3 weeks we've got teacher training. It's 2,000 pounds, and you can start, you know, like, it'd be like, that would never happen, you know, almost never. So it's a terrible business model. But even consider the absurdity or the difficulty of trying to take out middle levels. So they go to a few drop-in classes, they pay for it, and then you try to sell them the teacher training. It's like still too big a leap. It's like in dating. It's like you go for coffee. You go for a nice longer date, dinner and a movie. I don't know. You hang out, you move in, you get married or something. But just like starting it with like, marry me. Oh, hey. All right, but only because I'm desperate. Yeah. Let's not pretend this is love. Yeah, so there's this importance of having levels to things. And here's the situation of most practitioners and a lot of businesses. Take away the pink spoon and take away everything else, and all you have is the ice cream cones. And that's the position of most holistic practitioners, which looks like this. Hey, thanks for coming in for the session. Would you like another session? At the end of that session. And would you like another session? Would you like another? And always this kind of single session booking all the time, which is a lot of work. That's a very hard business model. But then people feel like they're failures because it's not working. So they think, run for your life. They don't love you. Oh, a moment of silence for the.
It's okay, you won't eat. It's okay.
Those people are not your friends. What was I talking about?
I'm so desperate, I'll marry you.
Right.
Single sessions,
yes.
People only having one.
Talking
Yeah.
about taking out one part of the model and the whole thing.
Yeah.
Domestic competitions only having one.
But so, yes, the single sessions. So people, they feel like, oh, well, I just need to work harder. And it would be, but this is what it feels like in my mind, is like you're standing on the shore and somebody's like, I really want to get to that island. You're like, I swim there all the time. And they're like, oh, could you swim me over? And you're like, yeah, and you put them on your back and you swim them over, you drop them off, like, thank you, you're amazing. You swim back. There's somebody else on the island. Be like, holy shit, I just saw you swim that. Can you do that to me? Yeah, and they pay you and you swim them over, drop them off, you get back. There's a little crowd and they're like, oh my God, that's great. You start just doing that all the time. But now you've quit your job because you're like, I'm swimming people over. I don't have to work my 9-to-5 job. I'm swimming to this beautiful island. And then you drown and die eventually because you're just so exhausted. But you can't stop doing it because now you're like hooked into this. Like you need to just keep booking more sessions of swimming people over on your back. Eventually you want to like get a log, just that you can put 2 people on, get like a little bit of financial space, you know. And after you do that for a while, maybe you build a raft, and then you start to build a boat. A boat that can take more people over at a time, and a boat that can also carry you, so you're not swimming in the cold, freezing water all the time. You can still do that, but expanding it a bit more. There was a so there are two reasons why the container matters. 2 sort of key principles here. The first is about safety. And the second is about sustainability. Safety and sustainability. So the safety is really the pink spoon piece. Letting people check us out at a distance to get to know us. not trying to push things so fast. You know, there's this whole slow food movement. There's the slow fashion movement, the slow money movement. There's a whole bunch of these slow movements. And I feel like that with marketing too. There needs to be a slow marketing movement where we slow things down. Things don't get rushed. You run a networking group, I don't know, you probably see it a lot, where just people run around giving business cards to people for no reason. Like, there's not even been a connection yet. It's like, hi, how are you? Here's my card. And like, as if to say, hey, could you throw this out for me? Thank you so much. And people trying to write, like, hey, we should work together. And I'm like, and my name is Ted. What is your name? Too quick. And we want to give people ways to check us out from a distance. I was in Edmonton at the farmer's market, and these two women were walking, and one of them said to the other, it's like, you know, I'm the kind of person that I walk the whole farmer's market, and then I buy on the way back. You know, you can probably relate. You want to see things, see what your options are from a safe distance. And then, because you know, if you ever been to like a craft show or something, there's somebody just sitting there lonely at their table and sad, and you like you made the mistake, you went up and then you talk to them, and you're like, oh shit, I'm in a conversation with you, and you don't want to buy anything, but you feel guilty. You're like, I should buy something cheap because I don't want to offend them if I leave. I obviously don't like it, so maybe you buy something cheap, or it's the awkward conversation. It's like, sorry, I like you. Have a good day. And we walk away. And who wants to be in that conversation? Nobody. So people don't go up to the table at first. They want to just be able to like look and see and make the choice if they want to approach, yeah, rather than being accosted necessarily. And if they like the vibe, they like the thing of it, they'll take a step forward. So the whole idea of pink spoons is giving people so many different ways and samples to check us out in a safe way that they can take steps forward. And they can feel for themselves, is this a fit for me? When you have enough pink spoons, it also acts as kind of a filter. So by the time people show up to you, they're like, I want to work with you. I like you. I like your point of view. I like the way you see things. I like what you're about. I want to work with you. And there isn't this whole having to sell people and push people, because they've already pre-filtered themselves often through those pink spoons. Who's checked out my website? I'm curious. Okay, a few people. So what are the pink spoons on my website that you saw? There's that ebook. There's this like 200-page ebook you can download. What else? There's some videos. Yeah. There's like 2 hours of YouTube stuff. There's a blog. There's a bunch of case studies. So, what are examples of pink spoons that you can think of from business? Like free samples, where there's like no cost to you, there's no risk to you, but you still get to check it out.
Endless emails I get from various. You sign up to somebody's newsletter, and then they send you, my good friend so-and-so is doing this, and you kind of get the same video from 10 different...
You sound thrilled about that.
Yes.
Okay, so pink spoons. Pink spoons, something that gives you a sample. What?
Like if I'm sat waiting for my osteopath to be available, she has some other brochures there, and I actually find them quite interesting.
Okay.
So I can put them back if they're of interest to me. But if I think, that will be good for my husband, I'll take one and I can look at it from distance.
Well, here's the distinction I put out, is that I think a pink spoon, if it's useful and interesting, maybe it's a pink spoon. I think there's 4 criteria of a pink spoon. One is that it's free. There's no cost to it. Second is there's no risk to them to use it. There's no risk to them. Third is that there's very little or no effort for you. And fourth is that it's actually valuable. It's actually useful. It actually helps somebody on the journey they're making. It helps them with their problems in some way. So for the most part, I would say like
So it's free, no risk, valuable.
Free, no risk, very little effort for you, or no effort for you, and it's valuable. It's something useful. It's an actual taste. So it's the difference for me between like a poster of like try this new ice cream flavor, and the actual pink spoon sample of the ice cream itself. So I would say for the most part, advertisements or flyers are not really pink spoons, unless there's something very useful and informative in the brochure. What are other examples by that criteria? What are pink spoony things?
Standing up and talking at a networking, your 5 minutes at your networking.
If it's useful, again, if it's useful, and that's the distinction. If it's like, here's why you should hire me and why I'm so great for 5 minutes, that's not a pink spoon. If it's like, hey, here's something useful that I do that you can do immediately, and people are like, oh, that was really practical and useful, that's a pink spoon.
Does it count, say, they email you and say that they'd like to talk to you and ask some questions. So you arrange a phone call and you talk to them over the phone to give them so they can discuss with you what they're looking for and if you can help them. Is that Pinksman?
I'm confused. Who's
Well,
doing that?
if they ring you, but they haven't actually made it.
Oh, like a free consultation?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, it's not a consultation. It's just a discussion over the phone for about.
I would say
10 minutes.
that's. I don't know if that's. It maybe lets them get you.
Always
Right.
to come usually after that.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah. If they get a sample of you and a feel for you,
Yeah,
that can be.
because you're kind of talking to them, they
Yeah.
hear you and they hear what you're like.
Yeah, that can be a bit of a pink spoon. So the free seminars, yeah, free workshops. Also, I think bakeries give those little free samples. Grocery stores always have free samples of things you can try. The whole idea of a free sample isn't a new idea. It just works though. It's generous, and it's also a calculated risk, I guess. But it's just knowing it's like, okay, if this is good, people who like it will sample it and will want more. So the more of these online video, is a huge one. Audio, written things online. Give people a way to check us out at a distance. The more of these we have, the easier our life becomes because people show up ready. And then we also have things we can send people. We're talking to somebody at a networking event, and they're like, oh, what you do sounds interesting. And instead of being like, well, let's book a session right now, you can be like, oh, well, let me send you this video that I've got about this thing we were talking about. And it starts things off very gently and nicely. And they're often like, oh, that's really cool. Can I book a session? I don't ask people to, like, hey, let me do a coaching session with you. People just email me and like, can I hire you? What are your rates? Or I already know your rates. I want to hire you. Pinksmans. But the sustainability is kind of the rest of this. Yeah? The rest of the funnel. So the container makes it safe for us, safe for them to approach us, but it also makes it sustainable for us. Like there was an astrologer in Winnipeg, and she had the worst business model in the world, which is just selling a single ice cream cone to a single person once, and that was it. Meaning she would she'd read their life charts, 90 minutes, $150, and then goodbye. And her thing was like, well, I've read their life chart. That's the integrity thing, is to just read it and move on. And I was like, about to launch into this tirade, but this woman in the back was like, can I just say something? It's like, I saw an astrologer. I loved it. I had my life chart read. It was great. And then I felt kind of ditched because I wanted more. Like, I was like, oh, if we could have talked once a month for like half an hour on the phone, and like 1 month we talk about relationships and the money and all this. And I was like, cool. And I was like, well, what would you have paid for that? She's like, I don't know, whatever she charged. So I was like, well, hold that thought. What do you charge? She's like, $100 an hour. I was like, would you have paid $600 a year or maybe a little less for a package on? And she's like, yeah. And I was like, well, first you two need to talk. I was like, but it just staggered me how much money she'd probably lost over the years. Like, do you get it? Like, not everyone's going to want that, or not. It wouldn't be appropriate it wouldn't be a fit for everyone. But there are some people who would have, who probably would have been like, what? I can talk. I'd never even thought about that. But yes, I would love to, if that had just been even on the table as an option. There was an internet web design company in Edmonton, and they had super high-profile clients, like kind of big pockets. And they came to me being like, about the water, like, get us more water in the bucket. And I was like not convinced that they didn't have a bunch of leaks. So I was like, first, let's look at this bucket. And we looked at like all their clients and all the services they offered, and we figured out who had what and who needed what. And it turned out that most of their clients really needed a bunch of the services they had that they hadn't even offered them yet. So existing clients, existing services. And when we calculated that out and figured how likely it was that different clients would go for it, conservatively, and I haggled them down to like a third of what their projections were, and a third of their projections was like $120,000, just sitting on the table from existing clients. So I was like, let's get new clients, but first, let's go to the existing clients, So I've had this too with, like, I can't even tell you how it's changed my life to start developing more of this funnel. Because first, I just had a weekend workshop that I did, and that was it. And then eventually, I'm like the laziest hippie. So it took me a long time. And I was like, I should do another level 2 workshop. And when I finally did that, because, it's like, you wouldn't come back to this 3-hour workshop in a month. It's the same stuff. Even the jokes would be the same, you know? And you'd be like, oh, he tricked me. Um, I just came because he's good looking. Yeah, so they wouldn't come back, and I knew that. But as soon as I offered another level workshop, a bunch of them were like so excited to sign up. I was like, I can't believe I didn't do this earlier. They were just waiting for that. And then I had I took the weekend workshop, and I turned it into a 6-week teleseminar series. So every Wednesday for 90 minutes there was a call, and then I got that recorded and transcribed. But then it was like I made a bunch of money from doing that. And there were people in Chicago who were like, "Thank you. We can't come to your workshops. We still wanted a chance." And then I'll eventually have that, and I can sell that as a home study thing, you know, just the PDF of it. So it was like, this is like so much easier. And it was all just sitting there, waiting for something to be done with it. And so for a lot of practitioners, there are programs they could start offering. There are packages they could put together. There are programs, packages, products that they could be offering. Other things they could be offering that could make this whole funnel a lot more sustainable. Just adding a workshop, adding another service. For most practitioners, yeah, they have the modality they do, but there's often a certain topic or issue or something they're actually very passionate about. It's like, well, why not do a workshop on that thing that you're like so super excited about? And you can become known for that and start attracting those kinds of clients. And sometimes it works that you do the workshop and some of those people then become solo clients too. But some practitioners end up making more money at the workshops from that than they do with their clients. That's possible. So having this funnel thought out and giving this attention, how do we make it safer for them to approach but more sustainable for us is really crucial. So again, the container, safe and sustainable. The paths are really about making it easy for them to find you. So making it easy to be found. Because it's like you can have the best, coolest thing in the world, and again, if nobody knows if it exists, so what? A lot of times people are like, I made this new cabin in the woods, it's this retreat center, and it's beautiful, but it's deep in the woods, and there are actually literally no paths to it. And so people even want to find it, and they're looking, they've heard rumors about it, and then they're just pissed off and frustrated in the dark, and they can't find it. And sometimes people do that with their businesses. It's like you've made it so hard to be found. You have a website that's impossible to remember. You know, like there's a company in the States, 1-800-Flowers, and they paid like $2 million for that phone number. And that was probably the best investment of their business. So easy to remember. Very easy to be found. And the thing is, there's so many ways to market, and they all work. Everything you could name in marketing, somebody has found a way to make that work. Some people are like, networking doesn't work. I've tried it and failed. I'm like, really? Well, there are people that's their whole business. Hosting parties doesn't work. Really? Some people, that's how they make their whole thing. You know, social media is a failure. Well, I could also show you people who've done that. So it all works. So the question is not, what's the best form of marketing? That's the red herring distraction question. Because it all can work. The question to me is really like, you know, a Weight Watchers has this great line where they say, you know, there's one form of marketing that is proven to be the most effective. So there's one form of exercise for weight loss that's been proven to be the most effective form of exercise. And they would have people guess that they're walking, running, swimming, or whatever. And they say, here's the truth. There's one form. There's no debate about it anymore about it's most effective for weight loss. And it's the one that you'll do. You know? It's like, because walking, yeah, maybe walking is the best. Unless you hate walking. You know, I don't know. You just get bored with it, or you're resentful of your feet for some reason, you know. Why do you have to get places before me? Oh, I'm so jealous. Why do you follow me everywhere? Get away from me. So, I don't know. You just won't do it. And so public speaking, doing workshops or whatever, great form of marketing, unless you hate public speaking. Because, you know, it's like, I want to speak to you about how to be unstoppably confident. You know, it's like, good. But not, even less that you won't come across well, but more that you'll just not do it. You will avoid it. You'll find all these excuses and reasons to not do it. Versus if you can find a way of marketing that actually feels great for you, like raise your hand if you love to write. Yeah, that could be great. Writing articles for other people's blogs, or having a blog can be a great form of marketing. And you're more likely to actually do it because you're already doing it. Some people would like networking. You throw them into a room of strangers. By the end of the night, they've met every person. They've introduced them all to each other, and they're surrounded by people having the best time. And somebody else is just quietly drinking themselves into oblivion in the corner, just like shaking. So it's like to go to that person and be like, networking is the path, unless that's really meaningful to them, and they can find ways to do it. So the first thing is to figure out a way of marketing that actually feels good to you. Or sometimes I'll go through a list of like, here are all your options, and people will be like, I don't like any of those. I'm like, well, you have to do something. But sometimes these paths can be tweaked. Like there was a woman, this sweet Latina woman, middle-aged, in Edmonton, and I was giving a lot of public speaking examples, so she was like, oh, I guess I have to do some public speaking. But she didn't want to, you could tell. And this guy in the room was like, we should go to Toastmasters. But he was like this, I don't know, the kind of gross masters where it's just like so postury, so effective. I'm doing gestures with my hands, see how effective, anyways. I was like, no, you don't need to do the gross masters. But I was like, I just came up with that name. I'm sorry if anyone's in Toastmasters. But I was like, because I don't think even like you standing in front of a group, you'd probably feel a lot better if you were like sitting down in front of a group. And I saw her just visibly like relax. And I was like, and you'd probably feel better if it wasn't like in front of a group, like a classroom, but if you were like sitting in a circle, she was just like, oh yeah, And it's the same thing. It's like, it's the same, she could be talking about the same stuff, the exact same format, but just sitting in a circle, she could do that. And standing up in front of like this would just feel so unnatural for her. So it's finding the thing that works for you and or shifting it to do it in a way. Like some people can't do networking by themselves, but if they go with a friend and they like network for each other, it feels great all of a sudden. Because like, it's so much easier to market other people's stuff and to talk about other people's stuff. Because who wants to be the person at the networking party who's like, I'm great, I'm amazing, let me tell you about me. But it's so easy. My friend's so amazing, my friend's so great. Oh, you're too kind. This person's amazing. Oh, go on. Really, go on, this is great. So we can find ways to do it that feel good for us. What else did I want to say here? So what's interesting to me is if we take out some of these levels, what happens to it? If you take out the platform, and the platform for me, this will make more sense as we go into the next piece, but the platform is about clarity and also authenticity. It's about bringing more of ourselves into the business and more dimension so that it's really clear what we're about. So when people talk about us, they know what to talk about. They got a really clear vibe from our business. It's very clear immediately if it's a fit or not. So if you remove this, the platform from it, what you've got is a business that is so professional and nobody gives a shit. It's like you can check all the boxes in the marketing world. You're like, yes, they have social media plugins and an opt-in email thing, and they've got a blog, and they've got a professional headshot, and it's like everything's just so like, and you can't figure out why, but you're like, I don't care. I'm just not inspired. I'm not moved. There's nothing about this business. And it's like, it's professional, and I don't even totally get what it is. It's a lot of big words, a lot of jargon. It looks good. Check everything except I don't get it. So that's no good. Take away the container, the platform and the paths. You've got this amazing thing that a lot of people know about, and you're broke. And you're hustling all the time. I could name in Toronto 3 women who've been in the holistic scene for ages, and they are famous in the Toronto holistic. If I name them in Toronto at any event, people will be like, oh, I love them, they're so great. And everyone assumes they're rich. Everyone assumes they're doing super well, and they are all broke. And they're all struggling, even though their image is so good. Yeah, because they've got a very clear platform. It's very clear what they're about. They've got so much word of mouth about them. They've kind of got a lot of the marketing figured out. They hustle really hard, and yet there's no container for them. Most of them just have the ice cream cone, and it's totally unsustainable, even though they work harder and they are savvier than most of the other entrepreneurs. So that's no good. Take away the paths and just have the platform, the container, and you get this situation where You've got this thing that's really cool that just nobody knows about. It would be like you have a theme party, like a super cool theme, like a Doctor Who theme party, for example. Turn the front door into a TARDIS door. Don't you judge me. Anyways, you have your cool theme party, and you've got everything decorated just amazingly, but no invitations have gone out. It's like that. And I see businesses like that, where it's like, oh, you've got it all, like, it's so good, it's all ready, and yet nobody knows. So we need all three of these. With the paths, though, there is one thing that I'll toss out that you can do that, this is so simple. As soon as I say it, you'll get it. You'll be like, yes, that makes sense. And if you add it to any of the paths, whether it's writing, speaking, PR, social media, hosting events, networking, it makes it not just like 10% more effective, 20% like double, triple, 10 times more effective. And it sounds like hyperbole, but it's not. And it also makes it much more sustainable long-term, gets bigger immediate results for any path. It's kind of the panacea thing that you do across them. To learn it, you need to come to my weekend workshop in London. That's right. I kid. And so I mentioned this thing of there's this one thing that makes everything so much more effective, and I get it that sounds kind of hyped up, but here's the practicality of it. So if you imagine here, this you notice while you're away, this incredible art was rendered onto the board. And so you've got this person here on island A, and they are very sad. And they're sad because they have a problem. They have some symptoms that they don't like, and they're very sad about that. They want to be on island B, or there's some result that they want. There is something that they are craving. Yeah? And metaphorically, your business is the boat that takes them from island A to island B. Yeah? But the question, still, lovely, you have this boat. You take them from one island to the other. You've stopped just swimming people on your back. You got a boat. How do people get to your boat? Well, they got to take some paths. How do they find out about the paths, though? That's lovely. You literally, you take down some trees, you mow the grass, or whatever, you make a path, you dig. I've never made a path, but you do that. You make a bunch of those, and they're there. But that doesn't mean that people even come across them. Or they come across them, like, oh, that's a path, but they don't trust to follow it. So there's this idea in marketing of, what color shall I use? Yes, green. Of hubs. So hubs being, there are just certain people who are very well connected, very well respected in any kind of scene, in any community. And when a hub endorses you, that means a lot. When people hear about things from people they already trust. There are people who, when they recommend a band to you, music, or a movie, you don't even question it. You're just like, I will see that. Like, everything you recommend is amazing, so of course I'll check that out. And there are other people that are like, oh, dude, I saw this movie, and it was so awesome. And you're like, oh, let me write down the name of that movie so that I can make sure I never see it. Thank you. Thank you for your consistent terrible taste in all things cultural. But there are people who we trust. And do you know somebody like this? Yeah.
Many.
Yeah. What do you think is the number one reason why an email gets opened or not opened? What's the number one factor in that? Who it's from. Yeah, it's not the subject line. Because that's what we might think. We think, oh, you write a good subject line. I've seen a lot of stuff in marketing all about get the right subject line, and something attention grabbing. It's like, it's great, but it's like not even a fraction as powerful as who it's from. Because there are some people where you get emails from them, and it's just like forward, hilarious video, cat stuck on ceiling fan, and you watch it, but you don't feel good about yourself. Yeah. but you kind of know that's what you're going to get from them. And yeah, but it's who it's from. And it's the same with like junk mail. What's the average percent of junk mail that gets opened? Like direct mail, 1%, 2%. That's appalling. Like, you get how terrible that is. 99, like environmentally aside, how market just from a strictly strategic point, it's really terrible. Doesn't work that well.
Email into a list tag, what would you consider to be a good open rate?
That is 100% dependent on the industry. I did some research on that because I was like, yeah, it's my open rate, because I get like between 20 and 30% open rate, meaning 67% of people just don't open that particular email. And yeah, it really depends, I think, on the size of the list. Is it like local? How often do they send out? I know some people that send out really good content very infrequently, but they don't rely on their email list and like products for money. They do kind of other work like deeper down the funnel, and they just already have that set up. So they're not trying to use that to generate income. And people who send more stuff, I think it just goes down naturally a little bit.
30% is pretty good then.
I think it's all right. I hope so. I don't know.
Closing collapse.
I'll be a... Oh, God. I'll never ask my colleagues. No, but I've had some of my colleagues tell me they're getting like 10% open rates. But yeah, who it's from has a huge impact. So I want to suggest there are 3 levels of marketing. 3 levels that relate to this hubs thing. So there's the cold level. And the cold level in marketing is literally the cold approach, the cold calling. You go to random business mixers, Chamber of Commerce, and kind of the glad handling, just like, but you don't know these people. They don't know your name. They're not glad you came necessarily. And that type of marketing is hard. But then people beat themselves up and feel like, God, why is my business not doing better? It's like, because the approach you're taking strategically is just hard. It's just a lot of effort. You're not crazy. You're not stupid. It's just trying to like meet somebody, build a relationship. It just takes time. Slow marketing. It's like with irrigation, the slower you drip water onto a field, the deeper it goes. If you put water on too fast, it just goes off the surface and you lose so much of it. So building a relationship and identity, it's a timing thing often. But that cold thing is hard because you're filtering a lot of people who just are totally not a fit. And that's a lot of time to go through and be like, oh, what do you do in this? Oh, this is not working for me. Okay, next, So hard. That's the direct mail stuff, where it's just you send it out to a postcode and hope you get a response. I'm not saying not to do it, but realistically, it's often 10 units of effort to 1 unit of reward. Yeah. So just energetically, that's not a long-term sustainable thing. Sometimes out of desperation, people will do it because you just need something. But I wouldn't build a strategy around the cold level. Then there's the warm level. And the warm level is where you start to think about hubs. And you think about like, okay, who is it I'm trying to reach? Who is it on this island that I want to reach? And who's already connected to them? Who's already got a relationship with them? And can I get them to endorse me, to host me? So like Julie today. If I try to reach you, you're a hub, hubba. If I were to try to reach you all individually for this thing, it would have been so much more work for me, so hard, and you wouldn't have known me. You might have checked out the website, thought it was cool, but do you get the difference? Like you hear about it from somebody you trust, it's a whole different story. I did a workshop in Ottawa, and there was a woman there who ran a holistic shop. It was also kind of like she had holistic offices where people did treatments, and she was very well connected in that scene. She's like, you should come to Ottawa, and she hosted a thing there, and we had like, I did 2 or 3 hours of work on it, maybe 3, and we had like 100 people sign up. 100 people, but like so little effort because of hubs. So with a hub, to me, it's like at least a 1-to-1 return. So that starts to be much more effective, much more sustainable. It seems slower in the short term because you've got to build relationships with these hubs, but it's actually the fastest thing.
Do you have the client management system? So you've got all your contacts in different areas separated out?
I do. Yeah, so like when I send out emails about London, nobody else gets them. People in Toronto don't get all the emails that you're getting if you're on my list, which will slow down after I leave London and the workshops are over. And then there's the third level, which is the hot level. And the hot level is where you now become a hub yourself. Yeah, you become kind of a center in a scene. So like you. Yeah. You hot tub. You're a hot tub. And by being a hub, you not only can still do the cold stuff if you want, you can do the warm stuff, but now you have the additional distinction of now you can make endorsements too, and you can have joint ventures and business relationships, and you can profit from that, which is hooray, wonderful. So the hot level is ultimately where to get to, and also when you're at the hot level, everybody knows who you are, and when people are like somebody's like, oh, I'm struggling with this, everybody's like, you need to talk to this person. And you kind of become the go-to person in a certain area, which is just like saves you so much energy and the heavy lifting in marketing because you just kind of develop that rep and the street cred. But what's the question in particular? How do you become a hub?
How do you, what are you functionally doing to put yourself in a position where you...
I think part of it is you have to work the warm level a bit, I think, of just developing relationships with existing hubs, because I think if you try to show up in a community like, hey, look at me, then it's like sometimes that can get some pushback. So I think there's some just relationship building with existing hubs. But I think it's the shift from like just going to networking events to actually hosting the networking events, from trying to get awards to being the one giving the awards. An email newsletter would be like you've become a hub of a list, or having a blog even, where you start to build yourself as a hub of a list. Hosting gatherings of hubs themselves, where you start bringing other hubs together and yeah, and really focusing on building relationships with the hubs. Like one of the best pieces of advice I ever got around networking was like, don't go networking for clients, because that's the cold thing. Go networking for hubs. Like try to find like who's somebody who could get me clients, not just the person who might be a client, because that's hard to hit a home run and meet somebody and have them sign up right away. But if you like meet somebody who could potentially like host something for you or send clients your way, and you slow down, when in doubt, lean out, and you're just like but you like, hey, well, maybe let's go for coffee. And if you feel like there's a resonance and a connection, and you build that relationship, it's actually not that long. So it's surprisingly quickly. Sometimes they'll be like, oh, I'd love to send you some stuff, some business, or like, let's do something together. And it's like so much effort saved on your part and so much more profitable. I don't know if that answers or helps.
Also found with my website, I've got other people like the Social Dragon on there, and other people that do different types of therapy.
Yeah.
And by helping them, they've helped me.
Mm-hmm.
It just works. It just comes back.
It's
the more you get back anyway, don't you?
And it's community. It's community. It's where we take care of each other. And I think to me the distinction and caveat I put into this is I just feel like there's a I don't know how to word it. I feel like there's like a sincere way to do it and there's a cynical way to do it. And I feel like the sincere way is when it's like, I genuinely like you and I want to work with you, or this is just a business transaction, let's just name it as that, versus I've seen a lot where it's like just you give to get, where you like go and serve people and help them so they'll help you. And I just feel like either have that just be then explicit, that that's what it is, but don't pretend that it's like, oh, I really like you, and there's sort of, I've seen people posturing, kind of feigning like, oh, I like you, I'm all into you, and your stuff, but really they're just giving because they want support from that hub later. And I feel it when people are doing that with me, and it doesn't feel great. And I think part of being a hub is like really seeing ourselves as there's an internal shift of seeing ourselves in a role of being like a protector, a caretaker of our community, like a guardian of our community. A filter for our community of like what gets in and what gets out to our community, and being a trusted advisor where people know if they ask us about what we do and even related things, they'll get the straight dope from us. We'll tell it how it is. It's a really powerful place, and it feels it's more work, it's more responsibility, but I think also like with a lot of leadership positions, if you're in the community and you're serving and you're just trying to do something good, people often ask that of you. They start calling it out. It's like, I almost feel like politicians nobody should ever run for mayor unless people are like begging them to. Why would you? Dear God, what a terrible job. So sometimes people can just stay at the warm level. Eventually you kind of go into the hot level. I think you can be more conscious about it if you want to, and more strategic. Eventually it happens over time anyways, but you can go there faster if you want to. But sometimes it's like, I don't always recommend it, because being a hub has other shadow sides to that, and there's work involved. Yeah. So the hubs is a really key idea. there are 3 thoughts I want to give you in terms of hubs. These will seem so simple, but they're actually, if you do them, I promise a difference in your business. The first one is have a database of hubs. Create a hubs database. I'm just talking like an Excel spreadsheet. If you don't know how to use Excel, there's a teenager in your life who does. Bribe them with promises of beer and pizza, you know. Right, I know, totally. But yeah, so just create a very simple spreadsheet. You know, like my brother's a stand-up comedian in Vancouver, and every comedian I know has a little back pocket book. When they have this, I think it's his iPhone probably, but it's like when he has a funny idea, he just like writes it down, puts it in his back pocket. Because people have funny ideas all the time. And the difference between like, I think stand-up comedians, professional ones, and ones that are like amateur or people who never do it, is they just don't write them down. But he just writes down every funny thing that comes. Then every once in a while he looks through it, he's like, that was a funny bit. I'm going to turn that into a thing, and he experiments with it. And I see this all the time. Somebody will say, like, oh, what you're doing, you should talk to this person. They're like, oh, great, thank you so much. I'll do it. And I'm just like, you didn't write it down. You've already forgotten the name. That is like hundreds of dollars, just like gone. And it just kills me. I'm like, So to have something where you can write it down, like if you literally had a back pocket book, not a bad idea, but somewhere you can put it and then just move it, you know, at a certain point. You don't even have to do anything with it for 6 months, a year. You can just like let it build. It's fine. There's no rush on it. But you start to get these hubs, these lists, and you just have it. That's step 1. Step 2, especially if they're local, consider just going for coffee once a week with a hub. So simple, very simple practice to be like, hey, let's, you know, I see what you're doing. It seems really cool. Seems like we're working with the same crowds. Would you like to go for coffee? Depending on the level of the hub, almost everyone will say yes to that. Some people are so busy you'll have to like follow up with them a lot. But if you're like charmingly persistent in a gracious way, eventually. But imagine this, if once a week for a year you met with a hub every week, at the end of the year, like 50 hubs. That's not 50 just potential clients at the cold level. That's 50 people who are in a position to endorse you. 50 people who now get your platform, who get what you're about. There will be a bunch of those people who you're like, oh, this is not a fit, and that's fine. But there's going to be some of them who you're like, there's so much resonance between you, and seeds of projects will be planted that won't come into fruition for years sometimes a few months, sometimes immediately. And with each of those meetings, and if it's long distance, you can obviously do like a 15-minute over the phone kind of thing. But with each of them, I'd be just very curious if there is a resonance. And this will usually just happen naturally, just like, how can you help them? Is there something you can do? But also to ask them, like, who else should I talk to? Like, given what I do, who else should I talk to? And people, like, there was a guy, Lucas Coffey in Edmonton. He has this project called Music as a Weapon. And it's all about bringing music and art into social events. Basically, how to make, like, your events kick ass for social justice and environmental stuff. And he has bike-powered parties where they bring in, like, you know, bikes that you pedal and they power a stage and stuff. He's awesome. But this was like the perfect way to approach a hub. He sent me an email, like, hey, I've heard your name from a bunch of people that say you're the person to talk to, so I want to take you out for lunch and pick your brain on this project. And I was like, that project sounds amazing. I'm totally down. So he took me out for lunch, paid for it. And he's like young. He's like 21 or whatever. Paid for lunch at this restaurant, Cafe Mosaics. And I just liked him. He was really genuine and upfront and cool, and his project was awesome, paying for my lunch. So I just opened my database, and I was like, we spent an hour and a half, and I was like, you talk to this person, here's what you say, avoid this topic, talk to this person, don't mention, you know, this, talk to this person, make sure you mention my name, da 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 da. And he was taking notes. I was like, yes, pages and pages of notes. And then I started getting calls the next day being like, hey, Lucas Coffey, I got off the phone, he's amazing. And I was like, oh, you're making me look good too, thank you. You know, and that, I know that meeting had this huge impact for him because it connected with all. And then he was meeting with those people and being like, who should I talk to? And very quickly he mapped out who the hubs were. Yeah, that sounds so obvious in a way, but nobody does this strategically, kind of. And so yeah, coffee once a week. And the third, as an option, is to consider hosting a hubs gathering. Host a party, host a gathering where you can bring people who are hubs for what you do together. So when you think about even a particular kind of person you want to reach, like there's a realtor in Seattle, Phoenix Redner, and as a realtor he wanted to focus on dog owners because he was a pet owner. He's like, that's one of the things he wanted to be known for. So what are hubs for dog owners? Like where would pet owners, a realtor, sorry, estate agent. mixing that up. He's a estate agent. Where would you find pet owners? Breeders. That is the weirdest job in the world to me. Dog breeders, in my mind, a dog breeder is like, so I'm just going to light some candles, put on some Barry White, leave you two alone for a little while. Click. How do you explain your life to your friends? A dog breeder. Sorry, what else? In the park, dog parks. What else?
Dog walkers.
Dog walkers.
Dog rescue places.
Dog rescue places.
Puppy training.
Puppy training. Vets. This side of the room is killing you. Oh, come on. There you go. Where else? Where do pet owners already? Grooming.
Pet food store.
Pet food store, nice. There's more. We've got. This is like 1/10 of what there is.
Homes for old dogs.
Homes for old dogs. Retirement homes.
Brings us to what you're doing, isn't it?
Yeah, and dog kennels. Dog kennels. Yeah. What else?
Dog psychologist.
Dog psychologist. Yeah, yeah. Tell me about your mother who was such a bitch, you know. Dog whisperers, yeah. Think about also newsletters, meetup groups, magazines, radio shows, podcasts. And by the way, when I say meetup groups and newsletters, I'm not talking for dog owners. I'm talking like for particular neighborhoods. And I'm not just talking particular neighborhoods. I'm saying like for a particular breed of dog in that neighborhood. There are worlds within worlds that would horrify and appall you. What about dog? Yeah, sorry.
Labrador owners.
Yeah, Labrador. There are dog shows where they have booths where you could go, and as a realtor, he could just be networking the hell out of that place. So there's all of that. There's somebody at one of the workshops who was like, pet cemeteries. I'm like, great marketing, networking place for an estate agent. Just like, hey, sorry to interrupt the ceremony. Sorry. Hey, anyways, sorry to hear about your dog. It's dying. That's a bummer. And I know it's so sad, you know, because your dog's dead. And sometimes it's so painful to be in the same home, you know, where your dog died and all the memories and everything. You think about moving. Anyways, sorry. Anyways, if you think about moving, just here's my card. Just give me a call. Like the worst networking idea. But you get the idea. So this realtor could just go to Chamber of Commerce business mixers and be like, yes, I'm a realtor for dog owners. That's the cold way. The warm way would be he just starts to map out, creates a database. Who are all the hubs? Who are all those things we listed? There are probably 10 of each of them, or 12 or 20. Makes a map of all that and starts to maybe just meet them, go for coffee. But he could also host a gathering where he's like, hey, we all reach dog owners. That's our target market. I thought it'd be cool for us to get together and meet each other and learn about it. Because like I only do the real, sell people houses, but I'm always having to refer out for other stuff. And I just thought, you're probably in the same boat. So I thought it'd be cool for us to meet each other. So let's get together. 1 o'clock, I'm going to lightly cater it. Around 2, we'll do a go-around circle. Everyone will introduce themselves, and then we'll just mingle some more. Yeah? I've done this in most cities I go to, and it's the funnest thing in the world. Because then you bring those people together, and they just like all meet each other too. And then there's in the circle, there's a lot of like, I need to talk to you after the circle. And then like people are connecting. It's delightful. So yeah, so hubs. So that's the kind of the golden key here. But I want to talk about the rest of this image and this platform, because you'll notice a bunch of things here. So when we talk about, what time is it? What time are we going till? 5. Right, perfect. Okay. So there are 6 things you can be known for in the platform. So this picture here is the platform. And when we talk about the platform again, there are 6 different things you can be known for. Most entrepreneurs and holistic practitioners in particular pick one of these things. And I would suggest that's why their platform doesn't work. That's why it's limited. And this is the piece that holds almost all the other pieces back. So the first thing you can be known for is the boat. The boat that takes your business, that takes them from one island to the other. You can be known for that. In the holistic practitioner's case, it'd be like, I'm an NLP practitioner. I do nonviolent communication workshops. I am a theta healer. I do massage. I do yoga. That's the boat, yeah? The modality is the boat. So here's the bad news. Nobody gives a shit about your boat. you know. And in fact, most people don't understand your boat. They see the name and they're just like, cool. And so, but most holistic practitioners run around just talking about their boat all the time. Their website is all about the boat. So somebody's like, what do you do? It's like, oh, I do this unique combination of Reiki, Shiatsu, Traeger, and the work that reconnects. People are like, that is so fascinating. I'm out of punch. I'll be right back. And then they never come back. That's what can happen when you talk about the boat. Unless they've already heard about the boat. Like, oh, NLP, that's amazing for phobias. I've heard about that. Unless they already know that, it's just a whole education process. Now, it is a legit thing to be known for. This is important. I'm like, I don't want to knock it too much because sometimes people will search NLP, London, Nonviolent Communication Workshops, Brighton. You know, they'll see what's there. They do look for the boat if they already know. I would just suggest it's a very small percentage of the marketplace that's looking directly for the boat. And so it's like 3-5%. So if we focus on just that 3%, we lose everybody else. Good to be known for the boat, but this is like we don't want to just stop there. So you can be known for the boat, but mostly stop talking about the boat so much. Number 2, you can be known for you and who you are. A lot of times people mute themselves. I think, you know, and maybe in England people are more conservative too. But there can be a lot of like, I don't want to share too much about myself. I'm going to just mute myself down and not be too unique, not stand out too much. And which I think there's a very lovely side to that, I want to say. There's a lovely side of like, because it can go the other extreme. Or it's like, I'm so unique, check me out. You know, and like so over the top that it's kind of gross and a lot of what we might associate with America. So, I don't know. There's something lovely about slowness and being reserved. But when people mute themselves too much, sometimes I think they lose out on what's... sometimes like the reason we want to do business with somebody is because of the person. And because of what they're interested in. Like, raise your hand if you know what a Waldorf school is, a Steiner school. Yeah, so it's Steiner here. Yeah. So I went to one as a kid, kindergarten through grade 6, and that's on my bio. And it's funny, like people will read that and see that, and sometimes that's what like has them lean in. They're like, I don't know, I'm Waldorf. Oh my god. Or they find out I'm a Doctor Who fan. They're like, he must be awesome.
That's not on your website.
It is. It's going to be more prominent in the future.
Something like that. People would think you're kind of open-minded, creative.
Yeah. There's this, my friends Suzanne and Jeffrey say, let your freak flag fly, you know? That it's okay. In fact, it's actually, I think, important in marketing to bring ourselves a bit more into it. Because that's what, it's just part of the draw. That's part of the platform. It's part of what we're known for. You know, it's like when people, they dye their hair purple or they dress funny. And it's like when I did my first marketing workshop, I used to wear utility-kilts all the time. And I was riding my bike to my first ever intro like this. And I had my utility-kilt on. I was like, oh shit, I'm wearing my utility-kilt. And like, I'm not in pants. Utility-kilt? It's like a kilt, basically, but made out of like canvas, kind of like it's a contemporary. I like you. I don't like her. You're my new favorite. You're my new favorite. On a bite. Listen, there's a long. Listen to what I'm saying, people. I'm. When did I lose? When did I lose control? When I took my bed. That's fair. Hard but fair. Hard but fair. But anyways, but I just had this realization, like, if they can't deal with me wearing a kilt, then it's like, screw them. You know, I don't want them as a client. And it's like, oh, that's a good filter. So I went to this one yoga studio, and there was this teacher, Carol Fadoon, and she was in her mid-50s, not like your Barbie doll kind of yoga teacher at all, but she just embodied yoga for me. She was just so beautiful and at peace and relaxed. And whenever I was around her, I was just like, ah. At the end of all of her classes, I'd be on my mat just like, I never need to do anything again. I'm so happy. And I think often, especially in the holistic scene, there's this implied message that if you do what I suggest to do, you will end up like me. which is horrifying sometimes. Because this, like, but with her, I was just like, if I keep doing this, am I going to end up like you? Like, I'll do anything you ask me to do. And then in the same yoga studio, there's another woman, and she had a Yoga 101 kind of 4-week series. And the first class, she was so fidgety and seemed very neurotic and nervous. I was like, if I keep doing this, am I going to end up like you? Hell no. So I think who we are is important, which is, I think, why the internal work and everything is such an important part of this. But I just see that people have a lot more of their own story that they don't share. And I see this again and again when people will, at the weekend workshop, people do the intros like we did here. And sometimes I'll see people be like, oh, that's horseshit, what they're talking about. And then when they like actually sit with them and exercise and hear the story of what got them into it, they're just like, I'm sold. But we often don't share our story very well. We don't talk about who we are and what brought us to this place and all that we've invested. And our story is one of the most powerful things in marketing. Yeah, stories are the currency of marketing, I would say. So we can be known for us. And, on a website, that would be the bio page. But it's also just letting ourselves have flair, letting ourselves have quirk and kink and be different in the ways that we are. Some people are just naturally like night owls. They're never going to be a morning person. Build your business around that, Some people can start talks off really effectively. I can't seem to muster that, so I just let myself ramble. And part of it also is like, as you build a business that feels authentically right for you, it naturally is going to attract people that are going to be a good fit for you. But yeah, so there's the boat, there's you and who you are. The third thing you can be known for is the journey, in particular the journey from island A to island B. And I would say this is the centerpiece of marketing. This is like the beating heart of it all. This is the key piece, because they don't really care about your boat. The only reason they do care about your boat, if they do, is because they think it can take them from one island to the other, period. They have this phobia, they dream of being over the phobia. If they're like, NLP can get me there, I'll do it. But if one of their friends is like, NLP is so 80s, come on, it's all EFT now, they're like, oh yeah, screw NLP, I'll do the EFT. And then, next week somebody's like, come on, NLP, EFT, it's all KGB these days. Oh, really?
Is that the way that you do it, rather than not what you do, but the way that you do it?
No, this is not about us at all. The journey is all about them. So there are 4 basic journeys. I was talking about the KGB method would be. You will get over this phobia or I will shoot you in the head. I'm over it. I'm free. I'm free. Good. If I hear you have this phobia, I hunt you down. Oh, God. Some of my jokes are just for me. That's all right. Yeah. Do you know what one snowman said to the other snowman? You smell carrots? Maybe that's funnier to a Canadian. Yeah. So there are basically 4 symptoms people can have. I love my job. There's the heart, so for relationships, for love and intimacy and communication, sex, dating, all that, relationships. There's the there's money. I drew a pound sign, not a dollar sign. How culturally sensitive of me. There's the question mark around meaning and spirituality, the God kind of track. What's it all about? And then there's, I need orange. Oh. There's a carrot. It's a black carrot. Anyways, yeah, there's the carrot for health, physical health. So you've got the heart, money, so for relationships, you've got money, you've got sort of the meaning and God, spirituality track, and you've got physical health. Most people, their symptoms are going to fit into one of those 4 tracks. This is an overgeneralization, but it's useful. Because consider, this is the challenge. When I work with clients, the very first hurdle we have to get over is this piece around the journey. This is the first piece of clarity. Because people will say, like, I've got this boat. It's like, great, well, who do you take? Anybody, that's the best part. This boat is amazing. It can go anywhere. It's the best. And then I'm like, this is going to be impossible to market now. Because if you had a headache and you went to a drugstore and one was like, all-purpose druggy thing versus like migraine begun, of course you pick the one for the migraine. The truth is, not every boat goes everywhere. It can't actually. Not everyone will want to hire you as a captain. So like trying to reach everybody, do everything for everybody is just hard work. And then people feel like they're a failure. And it's like, it's not. You're just trying to do something that's impossible. So the more we can clarify the journey and stop talking about the boat so much, but talk about the journey, the more relevant it gets. And relevance is the first goal in marketing. Somebody just has to look and be like, that could be useful for me. That could help me get from one island to the other. Yes, I get it. Relevance. If there's no relevance, that conversation stops. They might keep talking to you out of polite interest, but it's no longer relevant to them. But so when we talk about the boat, people don't always get the relevance. If somebody's like, what do you do? Oh, I do this very cool thing. It's called the, belief repatterning work. You might then spend 5-10 minutes trying to educate them about what the hell belief repatterning is. Maybe they get it, maybe they don't. But they're not necessarily going to get, here's how this is relevant to me. And that's the first thing that needs to be gotten. But there's a guy in Calgary who did belief repatterning work, and his whole thing was because of his story and what he'd gone through. And when we think about the particular journey that we want to take people on, it's often very useful to think about our own story and our own life of like, what's the journey we've gone through? Our deepest wounds are often our truest niche in the world. The things we've struggled with are often the things that we are best able to help other people with. And so if somebody at a networking party asked him, what do you do? He wouldn't say, oh, I do belief repatterning work. He would say, well, you know how like for a lot of single dads, they divorce and the divorce is super terrible and like acrimonious and alimonious and the kids are, acting out and it's just a terrible situation. I help those single dads create a better relationship with their ex than they had when they were together, whether or not they get back together. You get how much more compelling and clear that is? And again, if the platform is about clarity, that's clearer than I do belief repatterning work, because nobody knows what the hell that is. And it's about the boat. The difference between somebody talking about the boat, I'm a parenting coach, versus saying like, how a lot of parents struggle with being either too authoritarian or too permissive. I help parents figure out strategies that feel really authentically right for them so that they can stay loving and calm and centered even when their kids are testing them the most. Do you get how that's not about the boat at all? But it's about the journey. And people start to be like, oh, that could be useful for me or somebody I know. That's funny with the single dads thing. I don't know his name. I can't remember. He came to my workshop. I wish I knew. But I can't tell you how many people at the end of a workshop would come up to me and be like, do you have his name? Like, I need it. I have a friend who needs it. And this is what happens is the platform gets really clear. People start to just be like, I need this. Or they know immediately. Or they're like, you should talk to this person. Just even without you asking, they're just like, oh, that would be really relevant and useful for them. So trying to say like, when people refuse to even look at the journey, what it basically sounds like is like, you know how some people have problems? Well, I help them get results. And do you feel how vague that is and how like, ugh, whatever. But even if you narrowed it to one of these four, as an example, if you're to be like, I help people who are heartbroken, get back in love, or I help people who are broke make more money, I help people who are sick get healthy, I help people who have a sense of spiritual angst and ennui find a deep sense of peace. Even just that is clearer as a journey. So the clearer we can get about the particular journey we're taking people on, this is a lot of what we focus on the weekend. We spend like a day on that, the better. Number 4 thing we can be known for is the point of view, and that's under here. The point of view. So the point of view is kind of our diagnosis, our take on the situation, our take on the journey in particular. We have a particular philosophy or perspective, understanding of it, kind of a map of the territory. So it's like we know that under the water there are these rocks, yeah? We know that under the water there are these tides that make the travel easier or more difficult depending how you work with them. We know that there's, giant sea crab. We know there's stuff under the water that makes it more difficult. And people, it's so hard. It's terrible enough to be in pain and suffer. It's way worse when you have no idea why you're suffering. It's like to have troubles in any of these areas is awful, but to like have just no concept of what it's about. And when somebody can be like, here's what it's about, here's a map. Of like, here's where you are, here's where you want to be, here's the terrain, here's what you've already tried, and here's why that didn't work, and here's what it takes. People are just like, thank you so much. Like, if you've ever had a health situation that you just didn't understand, and somebody was like, oh, here's what it is, and you applied it and it worked, and you're just like so grateful. In fact, I would say most holistic practitioners are doing what they're doing because they found a map that made sense to them. It's like, finally, that's a perspective and a point of view that makes sense. So think of, when we're talking about these maps or points of view, the 4 agreements, 7 habits of highly effective people, the 7 chakras, the 5 Chinese elements, the 4 directions, the et cetera, et cetera. These are all maps. The tree of life in the Kabbalah, it's a map. It's a way of understanding the world. So the point of view is really important for a bunch. I think this is like the most underrated part of marketing. It rarely gets talked about, rarely gets used, and yet once relevance is established, this is like the most compelling thing for people, and becomes the source of most of the pink spoons anyways. The source of like social media and blog content, and it can become a lot of what we're known for. So the point of view is important because, first of all, if this is all about finding a perfect fit, your ideal clients are going to be sharing your point of view, or at least open. They're not going to be having an opposite point of view to you. So this becomes one of the first parts of the filter. If we've clarified what the point of view is and we've honestly put it out. So when we're talking about a platform being about authenticity, this is like where we just honestly are like, here's how I see this journey. This is my take on it. So like within, health, physical health, there are a lot of different perspectives on like even what illness is. Some people, it's all about the acid alkaline thing. It's all about toxins in the body. It's all about deficiencies in the body. It's all about stress. It's all about an inconsistency between the will of the soul and the will of the personality. And some people are like, that's so this body. It's all karma from a last lifetime trying to screw us over. Different perspectives and different maps will resonate with different people. Even if we narrow from health into diet, what are all the different perspectives on diet or points of view? What are the different types of diets there are? Vegetarian. Vegan. Atkins. What else? Slow food. Raw food. Juicing. Grazing. That's the most cutting edge. Vegan. What else? Anything else? Alkaline. Yeah. The primal diet, macrobiotic, Ayurvedic, local, organic. You get a sense. Low fat, high fat. There are so many different perspectives. And so consider this. A raw food vegan going to a naturopath, and he's like, so my take is most people don't eat enough meat. And like you need to eat raw meat, raw eggs, raw dairy. Do you get how that's just probably not going to be a fit? If he's desperate, he might be open to it, but if he's like entrenched, it's probably not going to be a fit. It's like the fundamentalist Christian going to like some pagan healer, and they don't realize they're pagan. They walk in the door, and there's like a horned god on the wall or something, and they're like, before you come in, could you make an offering of blood to the goddess Hecate? Oh God, no, why? Or like the pagan going to the Christian place, and it's like, well, we're going to heal you. We're going to get you healed real good. Just put your hand on the Bible, Lord. Just like holy water comes out, just like, no. It burns. So when the viewpoints are so opposite, but a lot of people, I think, in marketing in their life just try to convert people all the time and try to like change people's point of view, and I would just let that go as a thing generally, but certainly in marketing. Because here's a conversation that has never happened in the history of the world. I believe that Jesus Christ is the only begotten Son of God sent to mankind to redeem him from his sins. Well, that's very interesting. I'm an atheist. I not only believe that Jesus Christ is not the begotten Son of God, but he never existed, as the town of Nazareth didn't even exist till 300 AD. I believe he's a corruption of ancient Egyptian myths. Well, heavens to Betsy. You've changed my ways. A lifetime of conditioning and belief and faith has been wiped out by those few examples. Thank you. Thank you for opening my eyes. Or the reverse. Like, that's never going to happen. I'm an atheist. But you see, this book is called the Bible. Oh, my God. Never. So part, I think, of marketing is just sharing this honesty of our point of view and putting that out as much as we can. And then people resonate with it or they don't, which is great. Because then when the people show up, they're like, I already like the way you see the world. That's what you want in a client. It's somebody who's like, I dig the way you see it. And when you have a clear point of view, it also starts to open up other hubs. Yeah. Because if it's like, oh, I'm really into this idea that spiritual growth is best done in kind of groups or community or in pairs, kind of dyad work, and that's better than just meditating on your own. It's like, well, who else believes that? Who else has that point of view? Byron Katie's into that stuff. Nonviolent communication is all about that stuff. The co-counseling movement is into that. Suddenly all these hubs appear just based on the point of view. Like my point of view about health is raw vegan. What are the hubs for that? Yeah. So the point of view is like this critical piece. And it starts with the clarity around the journey. And then we're just like, how do I honestly see that journey? How would I draw that map? What do I see the mistakes that people make? What keeps people from getting there? What are the key elements? What do they need to pack on that boat to make that journey work? What's our take on it? The clearer this is, the easier word of mouth is also. The clearer the platform is. So point of view. The fifth thing we can be known for is this idea of why. So this is the sun up here. So why we do what we do. I want to recommend a TED Talk. It's a video you can check out on YouTube. And there's a book associated with it. It's called Start With Why by a guy named Simon Sinek, who I think is actually British. Start With Why. And his name is Simon Sinek, S-I-N-E-K. And his basic core thesis is that people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. They don't so much buy what you do, they buy why you do it. There's a woman in Edmonton who does breast massage. And I was reading her brochure, and it was just very academic and kind of dry. And I was like, I don't get it. You are not this lady. You're not this university prof that this makes you seem like. And she's like, yeah, but it's boob massage, so I don't want to weird people out. And I was like, I get it, and I think you threw the baby out with the bathwater. Because it's like, if that's what this is about for you, if it's just about the boat of breast massage, then like, what are you going to put in your newsletters? Just charts and diagrams from Sweden? Like, nobody cares about the boat that much. But if it's really about something like women's empowerment, and she was like, yes, that's totally what it's about, then I was like, that's different. Because consider the difference of just being known for the boat, that one thing, that one modality, versus being known as somebody who's like really passionate about women's empowerment. You get a lot more leeway. If you just get known for the boat, people will probably pigeonhole you in the first boat they see you in. And that's what you get, this reputation for doing that. But if you take the sort of bigger picture, like the sun and the sky, that's the umbrella for all of this, suddenly she could be hosting women's circles, and she could be doing book reviews and DVD reviews in her email newsletters. She could be interviewing women about women's empowerment that's not even directly related, but is to the theme. Even though there's not there's a tenuous connection to the boat, but to the larger theme, there's actually a really powerful one. There's a guy in London, England, Graham Stones, and he's a massage therapist and yoga practitioner. And those are two very common boats. There's so much of that in London. But I was like, why do you do this? And he's like, London can be such a heavy, depressing kind of place sometimes. I just want to fight back against it. And it became clear that optimism and positivity were like why he did this. And I was like, I want to see that in all of your marketing, everywhere. Like, I want to, because it's like, that's so much of what makes you you. That's so much of why you do it. That's so much of your story. And that's a much more compelling thing to talk about and to be about than to be about the power of massage and yoga. So we start with this of just like asking ourselves, like, why do I do this? What got me into this? What keeps me in it? Why am I so passionate about this? Like, what are the moments in this that really bring me alive? And talk about that kind of becomes a drum that we beat constantly. It's not like you could have a page on your website, just why I do it, but it's more that this shows up everywhere. Same with the point of view. It's just kind of woven through it, infuses the whole thing. Yeah, there's this woman, Judy Wicks, in Philadelphia. She's got a restaurant called the White Dog Cafe. And her thing is, I use good food to lure innocent customers into social activism. And, But this restaurant has a bigger thing that it's about. a bigger cause. And people are more loyal to businesses that very clearly have a bigger cause. People who work in those companies are more loyal as employees. They're way more lenient with like bad customer service. There's a lot for this. And again, with the bigger why, we start to figure out hubs too. It's like, that's about women's empowerment. Well, what else are the hubs for women's empowerment? Positivity. Who else is really all about positivity and optimism? Oh, these people that do flash mobs and random acts of kindness things. I should be hooking up with them. And suddenly you've got a whole other crowd that nobody else is reaching, that you kind of become known as the person. Like here's a racy example. There was a massage therapist in Seattle, and she was really into the BDSM scene, which is the bondage, discipline, sadomasochism scene. You know, dungeons and whips and chains and leather and all this. And she like hung out her shingle to be a massage therapist to that community because she was a part of it, and they loved it because they didn't want to go to. Who wants to go to massage therapy when you got all these marks on you and bruises and everything? Yeah, massage therapy. Oh God! It's like, no, it's okay. I paid extra for that. You know, like that's so they didn't go to massage. But even though they wanted it, needed it, maybe especially. But so she hung out her shingle. I don't know if that actually relates to the why, but it's a good niche example. But yeah, so being clear about why we do what we do. Watch this TED Talk. It's really brilliant. The sixth thing and last thing we can be known for is this island C over here, which is the new idea. So you'll notice that they're sad on island A. They're happy on island B. On island C, they're super happy. And because here's what I've found is that sometimes, so people have a problem, and then they're craving something. There's something they want, but they can only see as far as they can see. And often because you've been on this journey, you can see further. So they're like, oh, I'm coming to you because like I've got this lower back pain. I'd like that to go away. And you're like, we can do that, but we can also get your structure so strong that you feel better and healthier and more vibrant than you've ever felt in your life. But that's not even on their menu. That's not like, they're not considering that as a thing. Because they maybe have never, it's like, how do you describe the smell of a rose to someone who's never smelled it? They've never had that experience, so they can't even conceive of it yet. Or they've got a lawn, and they're like, God, this grass is such a hassle to deal with. I wish I could just, have somebody deal with this for me. But somebody who does permaculture comes along and is like, we could not just take care of your grass. We can get rid of it, turn this into a backyard into an amazing oasis and a food forest that is always growing food that's local to here. That you'll never have to water, never have to weed, and it's going to make you a hero to your community and your neighbors. It's just like this amazing thing. They hadn't even thought about that yet. Totally new idea. Raise your hand if you've watched TED Talks. I'm curious. Yeah, so most TED Talks are Island C things, new possibility. If you haven't, go to TED.com, TED.com, and I apologize in advance for the week of your life that you're about to lose watching all these talks. They're so good. Yeah, not TED Talks, TED Talks. But most of them are the new possibilities or new ideas. And you can be known for a new possibility, a new idea that you're bringing in. There's Paul Stamets. There's a guy who does mushrooms phytoremediation. Do you know why the mushroom went to the party? He was a fun guy. But do you know why the fun guy left the party? There wasn't mushroom? Yeah! You're the only person I've ever met who knows that. All right, I want you at my workshops too. I might let you back in. But he does this. He did this talk. It's a 20-minute TED Talk that will just blow your mind. But he talked about how they took this soil that was totally contaminated. There's all this land and soil just because of gas or petroleum or chemicals polluted. You can't do a damn thing with it. And they would treat it with chemicals and all these things, but he just planted mushrooms on it and covered it for 2 weeks. When he uncovers it, mushrooms everywhere, and the soil is completely uncontaminated. Because somehow the mushrooms know how to take all those toxins, break them down into their organic compounds, and build mushrooms out of them. It's amazing. And he's like, we could just clean all these brownfields, all this polluted soil that we thought was just lost, we can clean it up just with these. And it was just oh. But that's a new idea. Until I'd heard that wasn't even on my menu. Or living machines, treating sewage through swamp systems, where there was a town in Eastern Europe, and their canal was basically their sewer system, which was fine when the town was small. It was like a lake that went through, or a lake that went through the town. A river, I guess. Yeah. It's called a flood. That's called the flood, when the lake goes through your town. A river that would go through the town. And So it was fine when the town was small. But as it grew, it actually became like a terrible, smelly situation. And they were like, oh, God, now we got to deal with it. And we have to get a sewage treatment plant, and it's going to cost all this money. And somebody was like, you don't need that. You could just plant these reeds and flowers, and it would actually look very beautiful. And by the time it gets to the ocean, it's completely clean, because it gets cleaned by the ecosystem, like rivers and streams naturally clean things, and how swamp systems naturally clean themselves. And amazing. New idea. Until that town had heard that, that wasn't even a possibility. So sometimes our work represents that, or has elements that are just like, they would never ask for it, but you do offer it. But so that can be a part of what we're known for. That can be part of our platform. They're talking about the dog. I miss it so.
There's 3 of them.
We've made a terrible mistake. Yeah. But here's the most compelling part to me out of all of this, is that all of these things ultimately can get woven back into the boat itself. So the boat doesn't just become this generic thing, that the boat actually becomes an expression. The platform becomes expressed in the container. So to tie this together, the boat is the container. Yeah? The boat, and the container is also the bucket, and the container is also the sales funnel. The sales funnel is the boat, the bucket is the boat. It's all the same kind of thing. So the container ultimately becomes an expression of the platform. I don't know if you've ever had this, where you're traveling and you walked into a cafe and you just like fell in love immediately. You walked in and you're like, oh, I love this place. And you're like, I'm just going to visit here every day. And it's funny how different people get attracted to different cafes. Like some people love the Italian cafes, just not my thing. But hippie cafes, I'm like, yeah, smoothies, what? So similarly with the boats, there are going to be some. So there's this. It's like there are 4 levels in marketing. Somebody's talking about the first 3, and I would add a 4th. The first was like you can be first in the marketplace to do something. If you're first, you do get a strategic, distinctive advantage. People will associate you with that more. Like Coca-Cola was first, Pepsi came second, and Coke leads. You can go industry by industry with these big companies, and the ones that tend to be dominant were often the first ones to market. FedEx, UPS. Yeah. So the trouble with being first is you either are or you aren't. And if you use that strategy, then if you're not the first one to market, you have to literally create a whole other category and be the first in that. Until a lot of work. Second is you can be better than others. And sometimes there are measurable things. You can be like, this boat will get you to that island faster, or smoother, or whatever. And we can actually measure that. Also very difficult because people will compete with you on that, and how do you prove it? But it's an effective thing. Third, you can just be different, which is a much easier go of it, because instead of trying to just say we're better or we're first, you're just like, we have our own thing. If you like this thing, shop with us. If you like this thing, go over here. The 4th I would add is like a dimensionalizing of that is this idea of resonance, of being resonant. That when the platform gets really figured out and woven back into the boat, there becomes something about the boat that just resonates with people, or doesn't. But it's like immediately clear. People walk in, they're just like, these are my people. These are not my people. This is for me. This isn't for me. Something even just about the look of it, the feel of it. Some people hear marketing for hippies and are like, nope. We did a workshop in San Francisco. A friend of mine, Amatma, she runs a gift economy naturopathic clinic. So she's a naturopath, but she doesn't charge for her treatments. But it's from a very composed place. But she's like, if you want to pay, you can pay. You don't have to. It's a very, just like, you can give it back to the community. But she's always has enough money. She always amazing. There's more to it than that. But we did a workshop together exploring like pay what you can, sliding scale, barter, gift economy, different alternative economic models. And we called it fuck money as a name. And it was interesting because, I don't know if I'll call it that again, but we were like brainstorming names. That was a joke. I put that in. And she was like, I like that one. I was like, me too. Let's call it that. And
Back and do that one for us.
okay. But it was funny because some people heard it and were like, I don't like it. It's like, we shouldn't say that about money. Money is an energy, and we should be affirming it and loving it. And they didn't like it. And I had hubs who were like, I can't promote this for you with that name. And I was like, that's cool. I get it. But other people heard the name, and just from the name, they were like, I love this workshop so much. So, but I think sometimes we're afraid of polarizing. We're afraid of people not liking us. So like, I'll just call it something very normal. And so nobody gets offended. Nobody gets turned off. Nobody doesn't like it, but nobody likes it either. It's just kind of meh. It's like, oh, yeah, it's a Reiki workshop. Cool. But there's no like pull one way or the other. And then they wonder why they struggle so much. Whereas when it's resonant, it's just like, when this all gets woven in, you get these boats where you go down to a harbor and there's like a bunch of identical boats and there's one boat that's just like so different. And certain people walk to it and they're just like, whoa, I love this thing. And then they go tell everybody about that boat who they know. Because they're like, I found our boat. If we're going to make the journey, this is the one to be on. Some people like pirate boats. Some people want the like 1920s France flapper, high class kind of party boat. Some people want the barbecue California dude boat. You know, some people want, everyone wants a different kind of boat. So it all gets woven back into that. So if you have, metaphorically, a boat that's like an expression of the platform, and you have a lot of paths leading to it with a lot of hubs involved, marketing actually gets really easy in the end. The work is in like building that. But then it's like I think people think of marketing as like all this hustling and handshaking and trying to manipulate people. But when it's done in this way, it's pretty easy. It takes time to build. It's like the slow marketing idea. You know, this isn't an overnight thing, but it feels better. You can sleep at night, and long term is actually, I think, more profitable and sustainable. Yeah. So that's what I have to say about marketing today.
Thank you, Tad, for an absolutely brilliant workshop. It was a long way to come.
Yes, yes.
But thank you so much. And thank you all for being here. I hope you've enjoyed it. I'm sure that I know I've got a lot out of it. So with a bit of luck. When are you back, Tad?
I don't know. Next Doctor Who thing.
The next Doctor Who. Okay, so next time we're up for a workshop perhaps at Naked Dragon. Yeah, okay, that would be great.